I stood at the entrance of the sprawling hotel ballroom, clutching a gift wrapped in silver paper, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my chest. Guests streamed in by the dozens, women in shimmering dresses and men in pressed shirts, all laughing and calling out greetings. I tried to catch someone's eye, but everyone seemed to glide past me. As if I was invisible, a man in security uniform stepped in front of me, blocking my path with a stiff politeness that only made it worse. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This event is for close family only." The words landed like a slap. I looked up at him as Namatag Anthony, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. He just kept repeating himself, "Close family only." "I'm family." I wanted to say louder, as if saying it with enough force might make it true in this room. "I'm family. I'm Lila's grandmother. I've been in her life since the moment she was born." I tried to keep my voice steady, fighting the embarrassment prickling in my cheeks. "There's gotta be a mistake. My name is Marion Hunt. Lila is my granddaughter. Could you check with my son, please? Stephen Hunt, he's her father." Anthony glanced at his clipboard, then back at me. "I'm sorry, but you're not on the list, ma'am. The instructions were very clear. No exceptions." Through the glass doors behind him, I could see the ballroom decked out like a fairy tale castle. There was a massive bounce house shaped like a pink fortress, glittering blue tablecloths and balloons everywhere, even tied to the crystal chandeliers. My son Stephen clearly hadn't spared a single dollar for his daughter's 7th birthday. I tried again, desperation creeping into my voice. "Just ask him. He's inside." Before Anthony could respond, I heard the sharp click of high heels on the marble floor. My daughter-in-law, Bianca, swept into the doorway in a designer dress that shimmered under the lights, her dark hair in perfect curls. She was only 32, but carried herself with a chilly confidence, the kind you only see in women who are always in control. She gave me a slow, deliberate smile, the kind that never reached her eyes. "Oh, Marion, what a surprise. What brings you here?" The question was a dagger coated in sugar. What was I doing here? I was here to celebrate my granddaughter's birthday just as I had every year. I was here because I loved Lila. I was here because family is supposed to be together on these days. I came to wish Lila happy birthday. "I brought her something she's wanted for months," I said, holding up the box. My voice barely carried over the noise of the party behind her, Bianca's. Lips twitched as if she was fighting back laughter. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Stephen didn't mention? We decided to keep it small this year, only immediate family." She gestured behind her where 300 people were streaming inside. I saw coworkers, neighbors, women from her book club. People I'd never even seen before. But apparently I didn't count as immediate family. I could feel my throat tighten, my voice shrinking. "Bianca, please. I just want to see Layla for a moment. Just to give her this." I tried to keep my dignity, but I could hear the tremble in my words. She didn't even look at the gift in my hand. She's so busy with her friends right now. "Maybe next week we can plan something quieter, more appropriate." I knew she didn't mean it. I was being dismissed like a delivery person at the wrong address. The woman I had watched marry my son, the mother of my only grandchild, was looking at me as if I was nothing but a nuisance. I stood there, watching my granddaughter laugh and spin in her new dress just on the other side of the glass. I remembered the nights I'd rocked her to sleep when Bianca needed a break, the days I babysat while she went out for her endless appointments. And now I wasn't even allowed to hand my granddaughter a present. "Where's Stephen?" I asked, my heart pounding in my ears. "He's organizing things," Bianca said with a shrug. "So many details for these big events, you know how it is." I caught a glimpse of my son through the crowd, moving from table to table, shaking hands, laughing. It was like I was looking at a stranger. Suddenly, I felt old and visible, like I was fading from their lives without anyone noticing. I pressed the gift into Anthony's hands, my fingers shaking. "Please, just make sure she gets this." He nodded, looking uncomfortable. "Bianca only." Smiled wider. "That's so kind of you." "We'll make sure Lila gets it." Her words stung. I wasn't being included, only tolerated. In less than 5 minutes, I'd gone from beloved grandmother to an outsider standing alone in a hotel lobby. I turned to leave, forcing myself not to cry. As I walked to my car, guests swept past me in a river of perfume and expensive shoes. Excited for a party I wasn't welcome at. Nobody noticed the old woman with a trembling hand and a wrapped present that would never be unwrapped in her presence. I sat in my car, staring at the gift in my lap, feeling a hurt so sharp it left me breathless. Lila was 7 today. I should have been beside her, laughing as she blew out candles, holding her hand as she opened my gift. Instead, I was out here alone, shut out by the woman who'd spent years making me feel less and less important, less and less like family. But as I sat there, a strange resolve rose inside me, hard and unyielding. Underneath the sadness and humiliation, there was a core of anger that I hadn't felt in years. I remembered all the times Bianca had called me when she needed something. All the emergencies, all the requests for money, all the ways she'd made me feel essential and then gradually, quietly, erased me from their lives. I scrolled through my phone until I found the number I needed. For a moment, I hesitated. Making this call would change everything. But I couldn't let myself be erased any longer. The line rang twice. Good afternoon. Parkside Bank, this is Tara speaking. How can I help you? Tara had known my late husband and helped us through the paperwork when he died. Tara, it's Marion, hon. I need to talk to you about my daughter-in-law's accounts. Through the windshield, I watched balloons drift above the crowd, listened to the distant echoes of laughter, and felt the old sadness begin to burn away. I would sit outside for a few more minutes, but something had shifted. I was done being anyone's victim. I was done letting Bianca control what I got to be in my granddaughter's life. When I drove away, the gift was still in my passenger seat, but I was holding something much stronger than a present. I was holding the start of my own revenge. This story isn't over. If you're still listening, I want you to comment the city you're watching from, because I want to know how far my story can reach. Because no matter how small Bianca tries to make me feel, she's about to learn exactly how strong a grandmother's love can be. Driving home after that humiliation felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. The world outside my windshield was so ordinary, families walking together, kids laughing in parks, parents carrying gifts to their own celebrations. I felt hollowed out, like there was a glass wall between me and everything else. Just as there had been at the ballroom, the silence in my house was heavier than usual. I set the present on the kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. It was the toy Lila had circled in a catalog months ago, a remote control helicopter. I'd saved for weeks to buy it. I'd imagined her face lighting up, her laughter. As it zipped around the room, her arms thrown around my neck in a thank you hug. But she wouldn't even know I'd been there. As the hours passed, my anger solidified. I replayed every moment in my head. Bianca's perfect smile, the fake sympathy, the way Steven never even came to the door. The memory twisted deeper when I thought of all the times I'd helped them, how I'd become less family and more silent wallet with a heartbeat. It hadn't always been this way. 8 years ago, when Steven brought Bianca home, I was so grateful he'd found someone after years of drifting. Bianca was warm and eager, always asking about Steven's childhood, always wanting to know my recipes, my stories. She came from a small town, working as a dental receptionist, but she had ambitions and big plans. She'd look me in the eye and say, I just want to give Steven the life he deserves. He's such a good man. I want to support him and our future family. I remember feeling so seen, so wanted, like maybe the little family I'd fought to hold together after my husband's death would finally be whole again. The first request for help had come just days into their honeymoon. Their car broke down on a winding road in Maui, Bianca in tears on the phone, apologizing for calling me, embarrassed that she was asking for $400 to cover the repairs. We just want to enjoy this trip, and it's been one thing after another, she said, her voice breaking. I feel terrible asking, but Steven told me you'd understand. Of course I understood. What mother wouldn't? I wired the money. With a smile, feeling good that I could help. Then it was their apartment deposit, and a few months later, furniture for their new place. After that, Bianca's student loans, which were causing her so much stress she couldn't sleep. She'd sit at my kitchen table, eyes brimming with tears, hand pressed to her chest as she explained the doctor's warnings that stress could ruin her chances of conceiving. I paid off her $20,000 debt. My first grandchild was just a hope at the time, but the thought of helping them felt like a blessing. When Lila was born, I thought maybe the requests would stop. I'd helped them through the hard years, and now we had our grandchild. Bianca's gratitude at first was effusive. She called me a blessing, the best grandmother a family could ask for. But then another crisis. The hospital bills for the delivery had been more expensive than they thought. Insurance didn't cover it all. And suddenly I was wiring another $10,000 for Lila's sake, so she could have the best start in life. It went on, daycare fees were too high, so I paid for that, thinking it was just temporary until Bianca found a better job. She did, but the payments never stopped. The apartment was too small, they needed a co-signer for the house. Steven said. They wouldn't qualify without my name on the paperwork. I wanted Lila to have a backyard, a home. I signed without hesitation. When they struggled with payments, I quietly covered the gap. When the roof leaked, when the furnace broke, when Bianca's mother got sick and needed help, I sent money, always telling myself it was just a little more to keep the family afloat. They called less often, but when they did, it was always because something had gone wrong and they needed me, but it wasn't just the money. It was the way Bianca made me feel like I was indispensable, but only when she needed something. She'd call me the backbone of the family, and then in the next breath, tell me I was spoiling Lila too much, that I needed to step back and let them raise their daughter their way. Slowly, my visits grew less frequent. We're trying to build routines, Bianca would say with that practiced smile. Lila needs consistency. But then I'd see her out on social media, enjoying expensive dinners and spa days while I was the one paying for daycare. 6 months ago, I started to notice things didn't add up. Bianca's wardrobe had changed almost overnight. She was wearing clothes that cost more than my entire monthly grocery budget. She was suddenly driving a new car, taking Pilates classes at a private studio, flaunting designer handbags at every school event. When I asked about it, she brushed it off. Steven's doing so well at work. We can finally have nice things, but I knew how much Steven made. I had helped him negotiate his promotion. I started asking questions quietly, not wanting to seem accusatory. I paid attention. I looked at the bank transfers, at the receipts Bianca left behind. What I found made my heart freeze. The money I sent for Lila's care, hundreds, then thousands every month, never reached the daycare or paid for school clothes. Instead, it went to Bianca's personal account. Shopping trips, luxury dinners, weekend getaways with her friends, all funded with money I thought was going to my granddaughter's well-being. I felt stupid and angry and so deeply betrayed. I had been financing Bianca's fantasy life while I lived on a strict budget, cutting coupons and skipping meals so I could help. That night, as I sat with my head in my hands, something inside me finally broke. I realized I'd been used for years, that Bianca's tears and emergencies were just ways to keep me giving. I logged into my online banking and stared at the numbers. Over the past 8 years, I'd given them more than $80,000 money from my late husband's insurance, money from my retirement savings, money I'd worked my whole life to build. Also, I could be called family when they needed me and left out in the cold when they didn't. The next morning, I called Tara at Parkside Bank again. Tara, it's Marion. I need to know how much money is moved from my account to Bianca Hunt's personal accounts this year. Tara's voice was gentle, but as she read through the numbers, my stomach twisted. In the past year alone, I'd sent over $30,000 for emergencies that never existed, but Tara had found something else. Marion, there's something you should know. Bianca's been using your financial records to apply for credit cards, loans, even her car. My blood ran cold. She listed you as her primary support, her reference. She got approvals because of your savings, your payment history, identity theft, fraud. All from the woman who stood between me and my granddaughter's birthday party. I hung up feeling shaken, but also clear. I called Steven. He sounded tired, wary. Mom, I know you're upset about the party, but Bianca was just trying to keep things simple. 300 people is a lot to manage. Simple, I said, my voice shaking. Steven, do you know how much I've given you both in the last year? He stammered. A few thousand, maybe? No, $30,000. And not a penny went to Lila. I have the receipts, Steven. I know what Bianca's been doing. He tried to brush me off, told me I was imagining things. Told me nobody forced me to give money, but I was being dramatic. The words left me stunned, but they also left me free. I didn't owe them anything more. I didn't owe them my silence. When the call ended, I pulled every bank statement, every email, every receipt, and put them in a folder. It was time to take my life back. That day, I called Tara and told her to freeze every joint account, every credit line connected to Bianca Hunt. I told her to flag every unusual transaction, to report anything suspicious. Tara promised she'd take care of it. When I hung up, I sat for a moment in the quiet, listening to the ticking clock in my kitchen. For the first time in years, I felt in control, but I wasn't finished yet. I called the hotel, asked to speak to the manager of the ballroom. "This is Marion Hunt. I wanted to let you know that the credit cards used to pay for the Hunt party are about to be declined. They're frozen for suspected fraud." The woman on the phone sounded startled, but I didn't care. Let Bianca explain to a ballroom full of guests why her cards wouldn't work. Let her taste the humiliation she'd made me feel. That afternoon, as I watched the sun go down, my phone began to ring. I let it go to voicemail, then it rang again and again. Finally, I answered. Bianca's voice was shrill with panic. "What have you done, Marion? You've ruined everything. The whole party saw my cards get declined. The caterers are threatening to call the police." I listened, my heart steady for the first time. "You brought this on yourself," I said. "Maybe next time you'll remember not to steal from family." She raged at me. I realized something. I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time, I had power. And this time, I was going to use it for good. The fallout was immediate. My phone barely stopped ringing that night. At first, I let every call go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to listen to Bianca's accusations or Steven's confusion. I was too busy listening to my own thoughts for the first time in years. For once, the voice in my head wasn't telling me to give in, to make peace, to sacrifice myself for the sake of family harmony. It was telling me to stand my ground. Eventually, though, curiosity got the better of me and I listened to the first voicemail. Bianca's voice came through the speaker, sharp and frantic. "What did you do? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. They're threatening to call the police because your bank declined the payment. Fix this, Marion, now." I sat down at my kitchen table, listening as the messages piled up. Bianca, then Steven, then Bianca again, each one more panicked, more blaming, as if I'd been the one scheming for years instead of simply protecting myself at last. Finally, after the sixth call, I picked up. "Marion, you have to fix this," Bianca said, voice trembling with anger. "You're making a huge mistake. The whole party was ruined. My jewelry is being held as collateral. You have no idea what you've started." For a long moment, I just listened to her breathe. I pictured her standing alone in that glittering ballroom, the music gone, the guests whispering, her mask of control shattered. For years, I'd been on the receiving end of that feeling. Now, finally, the tables had turned. "I only stopped funding your lies," I said quietly. "You've been stealing from me for years, Bianca. The money I gave for Lila went to your shopping and spa days. You played me for a fool. Now it's over. You gave that money voluntarily," she shot back, voice shrill. "You wanted to help your granddaughter, and now you're destroying our family over a little misunderstanding?" "A little misunderstanding?" I almost laughed. "You committed fraud, Bianca. You lied about where the money was going. You lied to Steven, and you lied to me. Now you're caught and you're angry. I won't play along anymore." She was silent. When she finally spoke, her tone was different, low and cold, stripped of any pretense. "You're making a big mistake, Marion. Do you really think Steven will forgive you for this? Do you think you'll ever see Lila again? I can keep you out of her life forever." I froze. The threat was clearer, and it was more chilling because I knew deep down she was capable of it. Bianca was relentless when she wanted something. She had erased me from family gatherings, cut down my time with Lila, always with a smile and an excuse. Now she was saying it out loud. "You can try," I told her, my voice shaking. "But I'm done letting you control me with threats. You want a war? You've got one." I hung up. My hand trembled, but not with fear, with something like relief. The years of being polite, swallowing hurt feelings, pretending not to notice the exclusion were over. Now there would be consequences for everyone. Steven's call came soon after. His voice was rough with exhaustion. "Mom, what is going on? Bianca says you froze the accounts. The house payments bounced. Layla's school called. What did you do?" I took a shaky breath and told him everything. The money, the bank records, the lies, the fact that Bianca had used my credit to take out loans for herself. At first, he wouldn't believe me. He said I must be confused, that maybe there was some mistake. I told him about the receipts I found, the transfers Tara at the bank had uncovered, the mounting evidence that all pointed to Bianca's manipulation. Stephen was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, he sounded broken. Even if it's true, Mom, why didn't you say something sooner? Because I was afraid. Because I didn't want to believe my own son would let this happen. Because every time I tried to talk to you about it, you defended her. Because I thought if I just gave a little more, loved a little harder, you'd see me as family again. He didn't have an answer for that. What happens now? Now, I said, you have a choice. You can help me set things right, or you can keep pretending none of this is real. But I'm done being your silent safety net. There was another long pause. She says you're trying to ruin our lives, Stephen said. No, I replied. I'm trying to save my own. That night, I gathered every statement, every receipt, every bank record, and put them into a folder. I called Tara one more time. Freeze every account connected to Bianca Hunt. Notify the credit companies. Report the fraud. Her voice was steady, reassuring. You're doing the right thing, Marion. It's not easy, but it's right. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lila's face, her big brown eyes, her wild laugh. The way she used to run into my arms when she was little. Had I really lost all of that? Had Bianca taken not just my savings, but my family too? The next day, I took the folder to a lawyer, a woman named Patricia, who'd helped me after my husband died. She listened carefully as I told her the whole story, looking through the evidence with a frown. This isn't just about money, Patricia said. This is about power, control, and frankly abuse. You have more rights than you think. If Bianca's been using your credit without your knowledge, we can pursue fraud charges. And if she's trying to keep you from seeing your granddaughter, you can fight for visitation. For the first time in months, I felt a small glimmer of hope. Maybe I wasn't as powerless as Bianca wanted me to believe. Patricia drafted a demand letter, full restitution of the stolen money, plus legal fees, plus a formal warning about further attempts to keep me from Lila. If Bianca refused, Patricia was ready to file criminal charges. I was scared, but I was also free. I wasn't waiting to be included anymore. I was taking back my place in my own life. Later that afternoon, Stephen called again. Mom, we need to talk. Tonight, 7 o'clock, our house. I agreed. Even though I dreaded walking into the house I'd helped them buy the house, I now realized was more a symbol of my exclusion than my generosity. Still, it was time to face them, to lay everything on the table, to make them look at the truth they'd both been avoiding. That evening, as the sun set, I drove to Stephen's house. My hand shook as I walked up the front steps and rang the bell. He answered the door, eyes tired, his whole face a map of regret and worry. We need to talk, he said simply, and stepped aside to let me in. Bianca was there too, sitting on the couch, her expression carefully neutral. I sat across from them, my folder of evidence in my lap. For the first time in a long while, I felt ready. I felt strong. Let's talk, I said, meeting Bianca's cold eyes. Let's talk about what it really means to be family. And I knew whatever happened next, I wouldn't be silent ever again. The air inside Stephen and Bianca's house felt tense, thick with everything unsaid. The home was elegant, every piece of furniture perfectly arranged, the walls decorated with framed photos from family vacations, birthday parties, staged smiles. I noticed the expensive artwork, the spotless kitchen counters, the designer touches everywhere. The more I looked, the more I saw my own sacrifices reflected in every detail. Stephen led me into the living room and sat heavily on the edge of a pristine white sofa. Bianca, wrapped in a shawl that looked expensive and effortless, didn't look at me as I entered. Instead, she kept her eyes glued to her phone, her fingers tapping with forced calm. For a moment, none of us spoke. I set the folder on the coffee table and looked at my son, really looked at him. He seemed older than his 36 years, worn down by months of tension he didn't want to face. I saw the boy I'd raised and the man I barely recognized anymore. Stephen? Before we begin, I said, keeping my voice steady, I need you to understand why I did what I did. This wasn't about hurting you or Lila. This was about protecting myself from years of being taken advantage of. He didn't look at me at first. He stared down at his hands. You could have talked to me, he said quietly. I tried. You? Always told me I was imagining things or being unfair to Bianca. I let the hurt edge my words, but not overwhelm them. I brought everything tonight because you need to see for yourself. I'm not making any of this up. Bianca finally put her phone aside and looked up. Her eyes were flat, controlled. Marion, if you're here to accuse me of something, I'd like to remind you that everything you gave us was a gift. You weren't forced. I met her gaze head on. That's not true, Bianca. You lied about emergencies. You told me the money was for Lily, her daycare, her medical bills, her education. But the bank records show it went to your private account. It paid for your handbags, your trips, your gym. Not for my granddaughter. A silence fell so heavy I thought I could hear my own heartbeat. Stephen reached for the folder and began flipping through the pages. I watched the color drain from his face as he scanned the transactions, the transfers, the credit applications with my name attached. Bianca, he said slowly, not looking up. Is this true? Did you use Mom's money for this stuff? She bristled. I used some of it, yes, but it was for the family. You know how important appearances are for your work. I can't show up at school functions or your business dinners in cheap clothes. People judge us, you know they do. Stephen's voice was tight. That's not what you told me. You said it was for Lila's school and activities. You said we couldn't afford anything because of the house. Bianca scoffed. What was I supposed to do? Let everyone think we were poor? You know how the world works, Stephen. Image is everything. I felt the urge to shout, to cry, but I kept my composure. Image isn't everything. Lila's happiness is everything. Family's everything. All I ever wanted was to be part of my granddaughter's life, not to be someone you call when you need a check written. Bianca crossed her arms, her voice hardening. So what now? Are you planning to take us to court, Marion? You drag your own son through a lawsuit just because you feel left out? No, Bianca, I said. I'm asking for restitution. I want the money back. And I want your word that you'll stop using my financial information for your own benefit. If you refuse, then yes, I'll let my lawyer do whatever is necessary to protect me and my rights as Layla's grandmother. Stephen leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. I can't believe this is happening. I turned to him, softening my tone. I wish it weren't, but ignoring it hasn't made it go away. You have a daughter to protect. I have myself to protect. Bianca has made choices. And now we all have to live with the consequences. Bianca stood, her voice rising. You're destroying this family, Marion, over what? Some money? You're jealous, that's all. You never wanted Stephen to have a real family. You just wanted to keep him to yourself. Her words stung, but I wouldn't let them land. That's not true. I wanted to be included, not used. And you? I let my voice tremble with the truth I'd been carrying for so long. You kept me away from Lila, you canceled visits, you made excuses, you turned Stephen against me. Why, Bianca? Was it because I stopped being useful when I started asking questions? She didn't answer, just glared. I turned to Stephen again. You need to decide what kind of husband, what kind of father you want to be. Will you keep pretending this is normal, or will you protect your family from someone who manipulates and steals? The tension was thick, but Stephen nodded, his voice heavy with shame. I need time. I need to figure out what to do. Bianca's face was unreadable, but her hands trembled slightly. Take all the time you need, I said quietly. But know this, I won't back down, not anymore. The next day, Patricia sent the formal letter to Bianca and Stephen demanding full repayment and threatening legal action if there was any further use of my credit or attempts to keep me from seeing Lila. As I signed the documents, my hands felt steadier than they had in years. It didn't take long for the phone to ring again. This time, it was Stephen's older sister, Allison, calling from out of state. She'd heard about the chaos and wanted to know if the rumors were true. I told her everything. The years of manipulation, the financial drain, the exclusion, the final humiliating party. Allison was furious not at me, but at Bianca. I can't believe she would do this. I always had a bad feeling, but I never imagined it was this bad. Mom, I'm sorry I wasn't there. Her support made something in me soften. For the first time, I felt truly seen, not just as a source of help, but as a person worthy of love and respect. You don't have to apologize, Allison. I just need you to believe me. I do, she said firmly. I'll come home with you. Need me, whatever happens, you're not alone. It was a relief I hadn't known I needed. For the first time, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better, but the real test was still to come. That evening, a message came from Steven. Can we talk? Just the two of us, please. I agreed, and as I waited for him to arrive, my heart pounded with anxiety and hope. Would he stand up for me, or would he turn away? Would my family finally see the truth, or would I lose them forever? I stood at the window, watching for his car, wondering if this was the night everything would change for good. When Steven arrived that night, he looked like he hadn't slept. There were dark circles under his eyes, and the uncertainty in his expression nearly broke my heart. He stood on my porch, hesitating before knocking, as if he wasn't sure he would be welcome. I opened the door before he could knock a second time. He stepped inside, glancing around my modest living room, taking in the familiar details he'd grown up with: the old clock on the wall, the faded armchair where I used to read to him, the framed photos of a life we'd all once shared. For a long moment he said nothing. Tea? I offered, trying to keep things gentle, ordinary. He nodded, and I busied myself in the kitchen, hands shaking a little as I filled the kettle. When I brought the mugs back, Steven was sitting at the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the carpet. I found the receipts, Mom, he said softly, almost whispering. All of them. The bags, the car payments, the salon charges. It's worse than I thought. I confronted Bianca. She said it was all for the family, to help me fit in with my coworkers, to help Lila have the right kind of life, but she didn't deny any of it. Not the money, not the credit cards. She told me I was too blind to see what was really happening. He looked up at me, shame and hurt warring in his face. She told me you were controlling, that you were jealous of her, that you never wanted her to be part of the family. But I realized she's been lying for years. Not just to you, but to me too. I sat down next to him, unsure if I should reach out or keep my hands folded in my lap. Steven, I never wanted any of this. I just wanted us all to be together. But I can't let myself be used anymore. I can't let you or Lila keep living in a lie. He covered his face with his hands. I've been such a fool. I let her push you out. I believed every excuse, every reason she gave for why you couldn't visit or why Lila was too busy. I thought she was just trying to protect our routines. I didn't see what she was really doing. His voice broke, and for a moment he just sat there in silence. I reached over and put my hand on his back, feeling the weight of years of misunderstanding. Between us, you were doing your best, I said gently. We both wanted to believe the best of her because we loved her. But love doesn't mean letting someone destroy your family or your self-respect. He wiped his eyes, sniffling. What do I do now, Mom? She says if I side with you, she'd take Lila away. She says you're trying to ruin us, that you'll never see your granddaughter again. I swallowed hard. Bianca's threats were cruel, but I knew they were empty. She was losing control, and people like her always lash out when they sense their grip slipping. She can't keep Lila from you, and she can't keep Lila from me. If she tries, we'll fight her. Legally, if we have to, I have a good lawyer. So do you? You don't have to let her control you with fear anymore. Steven nodded, his voice steadier. I want to do the right thing. I want to protect Lila, and I want to make things right with you. I know it won't be easy, but I can't live like this anymore. I don't want Lila to grow up thinking this is what family is supposed to be. A wave of relief washed over me. For so long, I had worried that I would lose Steven forever, that Bianca's lies would become his truth. But now, sitting together in the quiet of my living room, I saw the son I remembered, the boy who always tried to do the right thing, even when it was hard. You don't have to decide everything tonight, I told him. But you do have to start. Talk to your lawyer. Talk to Patricia if you want. We'll get through this together. He nodded again, standing to leave. As he reached the door, he turned back. I'm sorry, Mom. I should have protected you. I should have listened. Tears prickled at my eyes, but I forced a smile. You're here now. That's what matters. After Steven left, I sat in the dark, watching the streetlights flicker outside. The house felt strangely peaceful. I knew the days ahead would be hard. There would be more arguments, more lawyers, more painful truths uncovered. But I was not alone. I had my son back, at least for tonight, and for the first time in years. Hope felt possible. 2 days later, the formal reply from Bianca's lawyer arrived. She was angry and defensive, accusing me of slander and demanding I withdraw all accusations. But Patricia was ready. She drafted a counter letter with even more evidence: bank statements, emails, text messages, receipts. She outlined a timeline of fraud and outlined our demands: full repayment, immediate cessation of any use of my financial accounts, and a signed agreement guaranteeing my right to see Lila without Bianca's interference. When Bianca realized we weren't backing down, she tried another tactic. She called me directly, her voice suddenly softer, trembling with fake remorse. "Marion, can't we work this out privately? You know how hard I've tried. I just wanted the best for Lila. I made mistakes, but I'm not a bad person." I listened, remembering all the times I'd given in to this kind of plea, all the times her tears had disarmed me. But I'd learned my lesson. I was polite but firm. "This isn't about you being a bad person. It's about what you did. You need to take responsibility, Bianca. The only way forward is for you to make this right. And if you try to keep Layla from me, I will fight for my rights in court." Her voice changed instantly, cold and sharp. "You'll regret this. Stephen will never forgive you. You're destroying his family." I took a deep breath. "Stephen and I are still a family no matter what you do. And I will never regret standing up for myself, not again." That night, Allison called me. She talked to Stephen, listened to his side, and supported him. "He's scared, Mom, but he's going to fight for you. For Lila, too. You aren't alone anymore." Hearing those words, something inside me began to heal. I was no longer standing on the outside of my own life. I was at the center of it, where I belonged. In the weeks that followed, the legal battle heated up. Bianca tried everything: tears, threats, even attempts to paint me as senile and vindictive. But Patricia was always one step ahead, and Stephen was no longer willing to look the other way. We started keeping records of every interaction. Every attempt by Bianca to interfere with my time with Lila was logged and sent to our lawyer. Every lie was documented, every attempt to use my finances blocked before it could start. The power she'd held for so long slipped away, bit by bit, with every truth that came out. I could see it in Lila, too. When I finally got to visit, she clung to me, smiling, giggling the way she used to. We baked cookies, we read stories, we laughed until we cried. For the first time in years, my granddaughter felt like my own again. But there were moments, late at night, when the old doubts crept in. Had I done the right thing? Had I destroyed my family just to save myself? Was it possible to have both justice and forgiveness, or were some wounds too deep to ever heal? I didn't have all the answers. But I knew one thing: I would never again let myself be erased. Not by Bianca. Not by anyone. Spring turned the city green again, and every morning I woke with the same strange mix of fear and strength. The legal process moved slowly, and every new letter from Bianca's lawyer brought a new round of anxiety. But every time Patricia called, her steady voice reminded me I was not alone and not crazy. She told me the truth matters, even if it takes time for everyone else to see it. In those weeks, I saw less of Stephen and Lila than I wanted. Bianca made sure of that. Suddenly, Lila was always too busy for visits. There were birthday parties with classmates, last-minute playdates, dance lessons, even invented illnesses. I documented every canceled visit, every excuse, every time Bianca blocked my number or ignored my calls. Patricia said, "This is exactly the evidence we need. Let her dig her own grave, Marion. Just keep showing up for your granddaughter whenever you can." I missed Lila fiercely. I missed her wild questions, her clumsy hugs, her habit of crawling into my lap and falling asleep mid-sentence. When I did get to see her, I tried not to let her see my hurt, but children feel things more deeply than adults ever know. Once, after an awkward Sunday lunch, she squeezed my hand and whispered, "I wish she lived with us, Grandma. Then we could have pancakes every morning." I had to blink back tears. Meanwhile, the rest of the family began to notice what was happening. Allison called every day now, sometimes just to check on me, sometimes to vent her own outrage at Bianca. She offered to come home and help, but I told her I needed her where she was, a calm voice on the end of the line. I was grateful for her love, even from far away. One afternoon, Patricia called with news. "Bianca's lawyer wants to settle," she said, her tone brisk and satisfied. "She's scared, Marion. She knows the evidence is overwhelming." I think she paid what we're demanding, and she agreed to the visitation order. She doesn't want this going to court. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. But a part of me was still suspicious. Will she really go through with it? She doesn't have a choice. If she tries to back out, we go public, and she knows what that will do to her reputation. And you'll get to see your granddaughter on your terms. The settlement took 2 more tense weeks. Every day, I expected Bianca to change her mind, to come up with some last desperate excuse, but the evidence was airtight. She agreed to repay nearly every dollar she'd taken with interest and legal fees. More importantly, she signed a formal agreement guaranteeing I would have regular, protected time with Lila. If she broke the order, she'd face contempt of court. Stephen, too, began to come back to me one small step at a time. He moved out of the house for a while, sleeping on a friend's couch until he could find a new apartment for himself and Lila. The pain on his face was hard to see, but it was also the look of a man waking up. He apologized 100 times, sometimes choking on the words, sometimes just hugging me tight in the middle of the kitchen. I don't know how to fix all this, he said one night, but I'm not letting her control me or you anymore. I want Lila to know her real family. I want her to have a grandmother who spoils her and tells her stories, not someone who just signs checks from the shadows. I cried when he said it right there in the kitchen because I knew the truth in his voice. For years, I had fought for scraps of love from a family that saw me as useful but not valuable. Now, for the first time, Stephen saw me as his mother again. Bianca, for her part, fought the agreement every inch of the way. There were angry texts, icy emails, phone calls full of threats and guilt. She accused me of being vindictive, jealous, senile. She told Stephen I would poison Lila against her, that I was trying to ruin their lives for no reason except spite. But it didn't work anymore. Every lie, every tantrum, every broken promise only proved my case more. The day we signed the final papers, Patricia shook my hand and told me, "You did the right thing, Marion. You set a boundary and made it stick. That's more than most people ever manage in a lifetime." I felt something in my chest loosen. For the first time in years, I stood tall in my own life. Not a victim, not a side character, but the author of my own story. The next Sunday, Stephen brought Lila to my house for dinner, just the 2 of them. No Bianca, no drama, just family. We made spaghetti together, messy and delicious. Lila helped set the table, her face lighting up when I let her sprinkle extra cheese on everything. After dinner, we baked cookies, and she licked the spoon and made a face when she got flour on her nose. We laughed until our sides ached out after Stephen carried her up to bed. He came back downstairs and sat next to me on the old sofa. Thank you, Mom, for fighting for me, for Lila, for not giving up even when I did. I squeezed his hand. Thank you for coming back to us. We sat together in the quiet, listening to the soft hum of the city outside, and I let myself hope. I hoped for more nights like this, more memories made not from obligation, but from love. Of course, not everything healed overnight. There were still wounds, still awkward silences, still nights when I missed my husband so fiercely it hurt to breathe. But I was stronger than I knew, and I had the proof now I could survive betrayal, humiliation, and even the loss of my place at a birthday party for 300 people. I could survive and I could win, but Bianca was not finished yet. She had one more move left, and I knew she would play it, no matter how much it cost her or the family she claimed to care about. As I tucked Lila in that night, I kissed her forehead and promised her, "You are loved, and I will always be here for you," even if it meant standing up to everyone who tried to keep me away. The next few weeks brought a quiet kind of waiting, a tense calm before the final storm. The legal settlement was signed, the accounts unfrozen, and my first official court-order visit with Lila felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. Still, every time my phone rang or a letter from Bianca's lawyer arrived, I braced myself for another attack. I knew her too well to believe it was over. Sure enough, the last battle came not in a courtroom, but in whispers and accusations that filtered through the rest of our family and the community. Bianca was clever, always able to play the victim when it suited her. She told anyone who would listen that I betrayed her trust, turned her husband and daughter against her, that I was trying to destroy what she'd worked so hard to build. The neighbors started looking at me sideways. A few old friends stopped calling. Even some of Stephen's coworkers believed the rumors Bianca spun at school events and church socials. The shame tried to creep in. That familiar old feeling of being the problem, of causing trouble for speaking up. But I forced myself to remember the truth. I hadn't started this. I'd only refused to let it go on. And every time I doubted myself, I looked at Layla, her smile brighter, her laughter free of that tight, anxious edge it used to have. I watched Steven too, learning to be a father on his own terms, struggling but growing stronger with each day. Bianca fought hard for sympathy. She refused to let go gracefully, demanding more time with Lila, demanding more money, even trying to get Steven to move back home. When that didn't work, she tried to poison every relationship she could. She claimed I was manipulating Lila, filling her head with lies. She called Allison and accused me of turning the whole family against her. She even tried to show up uninvited at my house one afternoon, pounding on the door and screaming that I'd ruined her life. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called Patricia, who assured me I'd done the right thing and reminded me of the protection order the court had granted. You don't have to let her terrorize you anymore, Marion. Document everything and call the police if she shows up again. Despite the drama, the family began to heal. Allison came home for a weekend, and we talked for hours at the kitchen table about childhood, about Dad, about how easy it is for love to turn into something twisted when trust is broken. I'm proud of you, Mom, she said, tears in her eyes. You could have stayed quiet forever, but you stood up for yourself and for all of us. Steven was a quieter presence, but more present than he'd been in years. He came over with Lila every Sunday, learning how to cook the recipes his father loved, talking honestly for the first time about the pain of letting go. He admitted how lost he'd felt in his marriage, how much pressure there was to keep up appearances, to provide and protect even when he knew something was deeply wrong. I let her make me believe you were the enemy, he said one evening, stirring soup at the stove. I'm sorry I didn't see the truth sooner. Forgiveness wasn't instant, but it was real. We rebuilt one day at a time. The empty ache that had lived in my house was replaced with warmth, laughter over burnt pancakes, Lila's messy crafts on the dining table, music playing on weekend mornings, the hum of a family piecing itself together. There were moments when I still grieved the years I'd lost, but I focused on the time we had now, refusing to let bitterness win. Bianca's downfall came slowly, but it was inevitable. When she stopped receiving handouts, her spending habits caught up to her. The credit card companies started calling. The new car was repossessed. The luxury apartment went back on the market. Her so-called friends faded away as her stories unraveled. When the dust settled, she moved in with her mother out of state and started working at a call center. Far from the life she built on borrowed time, there was a strange peace in knowing she couldn't hurt us anymore. I felt no joy in her suffering, just a tired kind of relief. I had loved her once. I had wanted her to be family. But I finally understood the difference between love and sacrifice, between forgiveness and forgetting. Some things could be healed. Others could only be survived. Through it all, Lila was my light. She was different now, quieter at first, watchful. But as the weeks passed, she opened up, her childhood returning piece by piece. She asked questions about her mother, and Steven and I agreed on the answers, always honest but gentle, never turning her pain into a weapon. Sometimes she cried for Bianca, and I held her, letting her feel what she needed to feel. Sometimes she was angry, and I let her be angry too. One night, as I tucked her in, she whispered, "Are you going to go away too, Grandma?" The question broke my heart, but I promised her I would never leave, no matter what happens. I said, "I will always be here for you. You are my heart, Lila. Nothing will ever change that." As spring faded into summer, the world outside my window felt bright again. I saw other grandparents at the park, holding their grandkids' hands, laughing at the swings. I watched Lila fly her little helicopter, the one I'd bought for her. Birthday finally opened, finally hers, and I realized that sometimes healing doesn't look like what you expected. Sometimes it's just sitting in the sun with the people you love, letting yourself feel safe. But the journey wasn't just about me. Word spread quietly through our community. Other women, other grandmothers started reaching out to me. Some had stories like mine, money given and never returned, relationships held hostage for financial gain, children and grandchildren used as bargaining chips. I listened to them, comforted them, told them what I'd learned about boundaries, about lawyers, about the strength it takes to fight for yourself. We started meeting every month at a local cafe, sharing advice and courage. We called ourselves the Silver Circle, a quiet group of women who refused to let their stories be erased. In those conversations, I found a purpose I never expected, turning my pain into something good, helping others find their way back to themselves. I was no longer afraid. I was no longer ashamed. I had won my battle, but more than that, I'd become someone I respected again. Someone my granddaughter could be proud of, but even as life settled, I couldn't help but wonder how. Many more women were out there living in silence, thinking they were alone. 6 months passed, and in that time, my world transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The bitterness faded, replaced by a steady sense of dignity and freedom. I saw Lila every week now, sometimes at my house, sometimes at Steven's apartment. Our visits were filled with laughter, stories, and the small traditions we created together. She was learning to bake bread, to grow tomatoes on the windowsill, and her helicopter flew higher than ever. There was a quiet joy in these ordinary days, a peace I'd almost forgotten I deserved. The Silver Circle grew from a handful of women into a real network of support. We met each month, sharing our stories over coffee and pastries. New faces joined us: widows, grandmothers, even a few men who had quietly endured the same betrayals. Each story was different, but the pain was always familiar: money given out, of love, trust broken, families torn by greed and manipulation. We traded lawyers' names, strategies for protecting assets, and most importantly, compassion. The first time Margaret, a retired teacher, told us how her own daughter had forged her name on a mortgage, she wept into her teacup. But by the end of the meeting, she was sitting taller, buoyed by the simple truth that she was not alone. Patricia sometimes joined us, giving legal advice for free, empowering women to take the first step, even if it was just documenting every request, every transaction, every cruel word. She told us, "You are not being difficult, you are being brave. Protecting yourself is not a crime." In those words, I heard the echo of my own journey, and I saw it awaken something in every woman who walked through that door. Stephen and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. He was a different man, more humble, more present, always asking for my opinion, sometimes seeking forgiveness for things I had already let go. "I'm trying to be the father I wish I'd been before," he admitted one day as we watched Lila draw chalk pictures on the sidewalk. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want her to see what real love looks like. I want her to remember that we fought for each other." We talked often about Bianca. She still called sometimes, her messages swinging wildly between pleading and furious. The settlement meant she had to pay child support, and her rights to Lila were strictly limited. At first, I worried Lila would suffer for it, that she would feel lost or abandoned. But as the weeks turned into months, I saw her becoming lighter, more confident. She talked openly about her feelings, asking hard questions, but never afraid of the answers. When she missed her mother, we let her grieve. When she felt angry, we let her be angry. What mattered most was that she always felt safe and loved. For my own part, I realized how much of myself I had given away over the years, piece by piece, to keep a peace that was never real. But now I cherished every part I reclaimed: my savings, my home, my voice, my boundaries. The woman I was before all this, a woman who begged for inclusion, who settled for scraps of affection, was gone. In her place was someone who knew her worth, who demanded respect, who would never again be erased. The last birthday party was nothing like the one that started all this. There were no ballrooms, no 300 guests, no showy decorations. Just Stephen, Lila, Allison, and me. We hung streamers in the backyard, baked a chocolate cake from scratch, and invited Lila's closest friends for a backyard picnic. Played music, danced on the grass, and Lila's laughter rang out like the sweetest bell. She hugged me at the end of the day and whispered, "This was the best birthday ever. I'm glad you're here, Grandma." Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and the others cleaned up, I sat on the porch swing with a cup of tea and watched Lila chase fireflies. Allison joined me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "I wish Dad could see this," she said quietly. "He'd be so proud of you." I smiled, blinking back tears. "I think he knows. I think he's the reason I finally stood up for myself." Phone buzzed in my lap, a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Marion, my name is Rebecca. I heard your story through a friend. I think my daughter-in-law is doing the same thing to me. Could you talk? I don't know where to start. My Heart ached for her, but I typed back, "You're not alone. Call me anytime. We'll figure it out together." That's what survival looked like now, not just escaping my own prison, but opening the door for others. The world was full of people who needed to be seen, heard, and believed. I was no longer just a victim. I was a voice, a friend, a grandmother, a woman who finally knew her worth. As I watched Lalo leap into the twilight, fearless and free, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: true peace. Not because justice had been perfect or pain had vanished, but because I had chosen to fight for myself, for my family, and for every woman still searching for a way out. So now, as you reach the end of my story, I want to ask you, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to fight for your dignity against people who should have left you? Comment below and share your city so we can see how far these stories reach. And if you need strength, look for the silver circle. You are never as alone as you think. Thank you for listening. If you found something here that touched you, subscribe for more true stories, because none of us should have to go through this alone.